All right, let's jump right in. Today we're tracing the 400-year evolution of what is, without a doubt, the world's most recognizable skyline. The architecture of New York City isn't just about the buildings themselves. It's this massive, magnificent story of relentless innovation, unbelievable wealth, and honestly, a literal fight against geography and gravity. And the sheer scale of this transformation? It is just staggering. I mean, we're talking about a leap from these tiny, low-slung brick houses all the way to giant glass towers that literally pierce the clouds. It's essentially economic and social history playing out right in front of us, reflecting both the diverse immigrant cultures that built the city and the absolute relentless ambition that pushed it upward. So this vertical journey spans exactly 400 years of constant, unstoppable reinvention. What started out as a humble little settlement called New Amsterdam actually went on to write the very rulebook for modern city building. In fact, your own hometown probably follows it today. Over these 4 centuries, builders faced some incredibly unique geographical and economic challenges, and their solutions fundamentally changed how all of us live. Let's start at the beginning. Section 1, Roots of the Skyline. Before they could reach for the sky, they had to lay the foundation. If you look back at early New Amsterdam in the 1600s, it was heavily driven by Dutch design. Think small wooden and brick houses with steep roofs crammed onto narrow, winding streets. But as control shifted to the British, and later as the city became part of a newly independent nation, that ambition really started to grow. By the late 1700s and early 1800s, people wanted elegance, so the style shifted to federal and Georgian designs. You start seeing these beautifully symmetrical brick walls popping up all over Manhattan. We still see this today in elegant townhouses, vital government buildings like Federal Hall, or even early surviving spots like Franz's Tavern. Moving on to Section 2, Reaching for the Clouds. Now, as we roll into the 19th century, a massive wave of immigration and booming business meant they needed a lot more space. But before the city went truly vertical, it had to bulk up, and it did exactly that with cast iron architecture. If you've ever walked through neighborhoods like Soho, you've seen these absolute marvels. They had these gorgeous decorative metal fronts that were, crazy enough, basically the 19th century equivalent of a mail order catalog. Seriously, you could just order the facade parts and put them together right on site. But beneath all that beauty was some incredible industrial strength, which was a super vital stepping stone for what was coming next. But as the population just absolutely exploded and businesses kept flocking in, they hit a wall, or rather, a river. The inevitable question was, how on earth do you keep growing when you are literally stuck on an island? You can't exactly spread out anymore. You have to completely change your entire philosophy of urban design. Well, a perfect storm of factors forced the city's hand. Manhattan is an island, right? So land was incredibly scarce. But necessity breeds invention. First, we get steel frame construction, meaning the outer walls no longer had to carry the entire crushing weight of a massive building. Then, you add in Elisha Otis's game-changing invention, the safety elevator. Suddenly, people could ride all the way to the top without fearing for their lives. Fuel all of that with a fierce economic competition for the most prestigious, flashy addresses, and bam, you've got the definitive recipe for a vertical revolution. And these early structural marvels kicked off an unprecedented era of vertical ambition. Buildings like the Walworth Building and the Flatiron Building weren't just functional office spaces. They were giant, undeniable statements of power. Take the Flatiron Building, for example. Its unique wedge shape was so revolutionary at the time, it actually created these chaotic wind tunnels down at street level that famously lifted the skirts of passing pedestrians. It was a dramatic alteration to the horizon that permanently cemented New York's reputation as the birthplace of the modern skyscraper. All right, Section 3, the Art Deco Golden Age. Accelerating right into the 1920s and 30s, we enter this wildly energetic, totally ego-driven corporate race to the skies. This was the era of Art Deco masterpieces. We're talking stunning geometric patterns, lavish luxury interiors, and gleaming decorative metalwork. You have the Empire State Building, which was completed in 1931 and reigned as the world's tallest building for decades. And of course, the Chrysler Building, easily one of the most iconic skyscrapers ever built. Fun fact here, its brilliant stainless steel crown and gargoyles, they were actually inspired by Plymouth hood ornaments and hubcaps, just a permanent sky-high homage to the automobile magnate who built it. These buildings were quite literally designed to inspire absolute awe. Next up, Section 4, Functional Glass and Steel. So, following World War II, cultural priorities heavily shifted, creating this drastic, very visible clash of architectural philosophies. On one hand, you had the grand decoration and the gargoyles of Beaux-Arts and Art Deco. But in the post-war era, we see a hard, deliberate pivot toward modernism. It was a total embrace of functional glass and steel simplicity. They completely ditched the lavish decorations and adopted what became known as the international style. During this period, roughly the 1940s to the 1970s, architects just stripped away all those geometric crowns from the past. They focused entirely on clean design and ultimate efficiency. This sparked what we called the glass box revolution. You can see it perfectly embodied in modernist landmarks like the Seagram Building and the United Nations headquarters. By using these massive, expansive glass walls and clearly visible steel structures, they created a sleek, corporate, very future-focused aesthetic that would actually go on to dominate cities all over the globe. Which brings us to Section 5, Resilience and the Future. Moving into the late 20th century and beyond, the city obviously faced its greatest tragedy. The September 11 attacks and the loss of the World Trade Center profoundly altered not just the skyline, but the entire mindset of city planners. Architecture suddenly became about profound resilience. It necessitated much stronger safety designs and construction, while simultaneously weaving these deeply important, quiet memorial spaces right into the fabric of a very busy, bustling metropolis. But bouncing back, modern New York has become this absolutely fascinating mix of styles. Contemporary innovations from the 1980s, straight through to today, combine reflective glass skyscrapers, highly futuristic luxury towers, and some incredibly creative shapes. We have the profound National September 11 Memorial and Museum sitting right alongside the towering One World Trade Center, but we also see really innovative urban projects like the Vessel and the High Line. What really defines this contemporary era is the blending of highly sustainable design with bold, wildly creative architecture. Now, to truly grasp this diverse architectural landscape, we really have to recognize the masterminds who stamped their unique visions onto the city's grid. We've got Frank Lloyd Wright, who gave us the iconic spiraling Guggenheim Museum. Then there's Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, who heavily influenced that modern, functional glass skyscraper design we talked about. I.M. Pei is known for his sweeping, modern urban projects, and Zaha Hadid brought breathtaking, totally futuristic luxury buildings into the modern skyline. Each one of them brought a completely different flavor to the city. So let's take a breath. How does all of this build into a single, cohesive story? Well, we go from the 1600s with simple colonial homes, jump over to the 1800s industrial cast iron boom, soar right up into the 1930s Art Deco luxury, pivot to 1950s glass and steel modernism, and finally arrive at today's era of sustainable, resilient design. Over 4 centuries, basic necessity, fierce competition, and pure innovation drove a continuous reinvention, totally cementing New York as one of the world's greatest architectural centers. As we wrap up this explainer, I'd love for you to take the lessons we've learned today and apply them to your own surroundings. Next time you're outside, look up at your own city's skyline. Consider the economic forces, the massive technological leaps, and the social history that's hiding right above your head. Because every single building has a story and a specific reason it was built the way it was. So what story is your skyline telling you?